And the wheel of time turns, and the ages come to pass, and I wish I could remember this passage as I make this video at last. Boom! See how I did that? What's going on, guys? It's me, Troy, and I'm here, of course, again with another video, as I always say. But I do want to go ahead and say thank you to everybody who recently commented, liked, and subscribed. Thank you so much for joining me here on this quest. And I am here to talk about my reading of The Dragon Reborn, which is the third book in Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time series, which Buffy is in the way there, so we're going to do it this side, which I recently just finished. And let's see, how do we start this? It's one of those books that, much like Paula Abdul, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, maybe. But we'll just kind of reserve that and get into the synopsis first. So The Dragon Reborn leaves probably, I think it's probably a month or so after the events that took place in the second book, The Great Hunt, in which it's been announced over the skies of this world that Rand al'Thor is the Dragon Reborn. He's back. It's happening. The prophecies are happening. He's both known for his ability to channel magic as well as being the Dragon Reborn. So both things combined. This unfortunately leads a lot of different nations into war with one another, as they are, if I'm getting this correctly, as they are now vying for the opportunity to be behind the charge of the dragon being reborn, if you will. That's what I've gotten from it. But right now, Rand is actually hiding out, tucked within this area, this grove, this hillside, this very small campsite with Moraine and Lan and Perrin. But he's actually out of the way of all this fray that's taking place. And him being the Dragon Reborn now announced over the world basically is too much for him, too much for a lot of his allies, his closest friends. And there's that moment that they need of adjustment and replanning and re-equipping themselves with the next available source necessary to continue forward with carrying on this prophecy safely. Unfortunately, Rand is very much deep within his feelings of this newfound power that he has hold over, this newfound acknowledgement that he's residing over, that with his ability to wield magic, he's very much afraid of using those abilities on his friends. And a big example of that taking place is when this campsite is attacked by some Trollocs, and Rand uses this ability to a very defined degree. And, you know, there's, of course, some injuries that come along. So Rand ends up running away to protect his friends and his allies. And that is where the Dragon Reborn launches off in one spectrum, because that is the path in which Moraine and Lan and Perrin go. And I always forget the ogre, Loal. That's where they go, as to rush after Rand to intercept him, you know, with all the power that he contains. And with all the different forces and nations that are looking to guide him or be behind him, be passengers to his journey, he has to be intercepted. You know, it's just a lot going on at this point. But that primary storytelling thread is led by Perrin. You know, as many of you guys know at this point, Perrin is the one that has these wolf-like abilities. So on top of him leading this thread, going along to track down Rand, he is exploring much more of his wolf-like abilities, that little aspect of himself, as well as maybe some little bit of moments of just some self-reflection as to how he became this blacksmith apprentice, now on this very death-defying and wild journey that has led him for the past year all the way across the world and far, far away from his home. So that's one thread. The second thread is that of Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine, who are now currently in Tar Valon. Tar Valon is like the big capital city where all the Aes Sedai, who are women who can channel magic, is where they reside. It's like this facility that they reside inside of. It's called the White Tower. It's where girls go who have the slightest ability of channeling magic. That's where they go to be, they go through these stages like a novice, accepted, and, you know, so forth and so on. So at this point, Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine are both in the, if you will, in training of sorts. More likely Egwene and Elaine. But they go to Tar Valon because, as in previous books, the other companion and friend of theirs, which is a man named Matt, they have to take him to heal him from an ailment that he has come across. 2 books previous. So they need the help of the Aes Sedai and the White Tower and the Amyrlian seat, which is the head of the White Tower, the head of the Aes Sedai, to heal Matt, as well as I said, get their training. But nevertheless, this trio of girls, as I said, consisted of Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine. They are led out of Tar Valon when the Amyrlian seat, in a very covert and sneaky fashion, assigned them this agenda, or this piece of mission, to uncover who are the infiltrating dark friend entities known as Black Aja that are inside of the White Tower. And with a piece of evidence and a clue, that's where our trio learns that these Black Aja individuals are actually on their way to the city called Terror. And that is where Rand is heading, and that is where Perrin is heading. So all characters, all avenues are heading to Terror. So now if you're just looking at those threads, Rand heading to Terror, Perrin and Moiraine and Lan heading to Terror, Nynaeve heading to Terror to stop the Black, Nynaeve and her crew heading to Terror to stop the Black Aja. What's inside of Terror is this fortress called the Stone of Terror. Inside of this fortress is this magical item called Kalendor. And Kalendor is this sword that's not actually a sword, but it's, they call them angrias, I think, something, but there's like these stages to it. But the point is that this sword, this Kalendor, as a magical item, you know, it cannot be held, it cannot be wielded, and much like King Arthur's sword, it can't be pulled from stone, although it's not in stone, but it can't be pulled or held by anyone other than the Dragon Reborn. But it's such a powerful item that it could be used for both good as well as bad. So the intentions are to bait Rand into going to pull Kalendor free, because of course he's the Dragon Reborn. And then here we are with the Dark Friends, including the Black Aja that Nynaeve and her team are following, are going to intercept Rand, take Kalendor for themselves, and of course, will kill Rand and take Kalendor for themselves. And then of course, you know, they got this very powerful black magic item that they're going to use probably primarily to free their dark lord, who is still imprisoned. So that is kind of the gist, hopefully, that I can lay out of this particular entry of the Dragon Reborn. Eventually Matt, as I mentioned, is healed, and then he is racing to Terror himself. So there's a lot. There really is a lot going on in here, and I think that when I make these videos, they're probably better. The linguistics of it all is probably much more attuned to those who are familiar with the series itself, because it's a lot. But as I said, this book, Dragon Reborn, is probably, like I said, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, maybe, or 1 step or 2. So here is the things that I enjoyed, and I think the things that I didn't enjoy. I think that this book slowed down, as opposed to the second book, The Great Hunt. I think the Dragon Reborn slowed down back to that same pace of the first book. As you guys who have watched my video know, that one of my main issues with that first book, where there was this rotating of the visiting of the inns, at one point, visiting of the inns, houndsmen and women and innkeepers being suspicious of our cast of characters, antagonistic forces forcing our characters back out into the road. You know, it just kind of rotated at one point. The same thing started to apply here, but I will say that at the beginning of the book, it was very centralized inside of, for a very good amount of time, inside of Tar Valon with the 3 ladies, Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine. So that was interesting to see some of the ins and outs and machinations of Tar Valon itself as this great big fortress, a force of magic where these girls go to become Aes Sedai, essentially. So it was interesting seeing that. It was interesting seeing some of, like I said, the intrigue that went on inside of the White Tower with the Amyrlian seat, communicating with the girls, and different levels inside the White Tower we got to visit and see. So that was interesting to see, very up close of the White Tower. But of course, that would have got stale after a while. One of the biggest things about these books is the world that Jordan has built, being able to explore their world and see their world. Unfortunately, and what I can say from some of the people who have left me comments, the first 3 books, if I'm looking at it correctly, the first 3 books are an arc in themselves, which makes sense once Rand gets Kalendor, so he's officially the Dragon Reborn. But then on top of that, a lot of people have stated to me that the first three books are very Tolkien-esque, they say, although I've never read any Tolkien books, you know, shout out to me not knowing that stuff. But the point is that Jordan's inspiration was Tolkien in those first three books. And they said that after that third book, it's the fourth book when the world becomes Jordan's own and it begins to open up. And the point that I'm getting back to is that was probably my main struggle with The Dragon Reborn. It was kind of suffocating. When I'm going back to the first book, there was that place called Shadar Lagoth or something like that, that city that's dark. It's the place where they came across those shadow figures. They ran from the Trollocs. But each of these particular cities and towns and stuff, they always had some character to them. And that was probably the big glowing example of a town that's tainted with a lot of character, tainted double speak there with character. And it was creative. It was something that was interesting. It was something that drew my attention and engaging. And it was something that I was hoping to look forward to more and more as the series progressed, as they go into different places with a lot of interesting paths, a lot of interesting, you know, histories, and a lot of, you know, just trouble in general. But as I said, there was this sense of kind of suffocatingness that took place within The Dragon Reborn, as everywhere that the characters went seemed to be repetitions of one another. It could be a different town, but it read like the same town. It could be a different end, but it was the same end. You know, it was always these ends. You know what I'm saying? Like they go to 1 to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ends inside of one town. I really was missing that grasp of character that generally is implemented in some of these towns that Jordan brings his characters to. But I did see some of that in Terror, especially when he described how some of the patrons or some of the residents have to walk on these little wooden platforms to traverse across the muddy road. So that's stuff like that. But just that danger that was seen in the first book of Shadar Lagoth, if I'm saying it right, you know, I wish that they got into that kind of stuff again. You know, I really was hoping they'd get into that. But I feel like The Dragon Reborn, it was a lot of towns, it was a lot of inns, and more importantly, there were a lot of ships involved. And I wouldn't necessarily have such an issue with it, but like I said, it just had this suffocating factor to it because it was always the same thing. But I wouldn't have so much of a issue with it if I didn't feel like each of these individual components that help facilitate the movement of the story. You know, there's the captain on the ship going down the river, the town, the inn, the same kind of innkeeper with the same kind of temperament. I wouldn't have so much of an issue with it if these different elements didn't feel so disposable, if you will. They just really needed a little bit more character to them to keep me vested and interested in what it is that we were using as tools to, as I said, facilitate our characters moving forward towards Terror. With that feeling disposable, it was just like, well, here we go with this again. We just kind of got off one ship, got out of one end, and here we go going into another one. So yeah, we just, you know, sprinkle a little bit more interest in there. That's all I'm looking for, just a little bit more interesting stuff here. But as, like I said, people have stated to me at this point that after the third book, that's when the world really become his, and it really begins to open up, and etc. etc. And then I'm hoping that, of course, we go to a lot more interesting and vibrant, and places that are just lustfully filled with different characters and stuff, you know, in themselves, not necessarily characters, but that sort of thing. So yeah, you know, that another thing that kind of bothered me about The Dragon Reborn is that while it was, I guess you would classify it as slow, but I'm like somebody, like, I'm not bothered by slowness at all, not really. It's the repetitiveness that gets me. But I don't mind drawing stuff out, you know. I don't mind details and drawing stuff out. But one of the things that did kind of get me here with this book is that, yeah, you would consider it slow, and it really was a build-up. There was lots of build-up. But in moments where I feel like where the action did begin to take place, or it should have switched over and take place and began to just pep it up some, you know, they were the places where it was just kind of too abrupt to me. One one of the things that really keep me reading this book is when there's lots of strife and lots of struggle. And one of the examples is on the journey, Nynaeve and Egwene and Elaine, they were kidnapped. They were kidnapped by this band of not so merry fellows who wanted to sell them as Aes Sedai to another force. So they ended up knocking the girls out. They got knocked out at least twice, 2 or 3 times in this book, which is another thing. They ended up knocking them out, caging the girls out, and beginning to make the exchange of selling the girls off to the dark forces that, you know, that they plan to sell them to. And so while the girls did escape, you know, they do have their Aes Sedai powers, it just kind of happened too easily for me. You know, they just woke up and then they were on the go. I wish that there was a little bit more struggle with that, a little bit more strife and struggle, because I think that when you really push a character down, that's when their most resourceful nature began to blossom out. And I wanted to see more of that. You know, I get that they are able to wield magic. I get that they're Aes Sedai. But what happens, I want to know, what is it like for them not to be able to rely on that? Not to be able to rely on shooting out bolts of lightning or flames and stuff like that. Like, how do they, you know, just, I don't know. I kind of feel like the character of Min would be the best representation of that. But my problem with Min is that she's infatuated with Rand, and I don't really see it for her. Like I said, The Dragon Reborn was good, but it wasn't as powerful as The Great Hunt. The Great Hunt was just like, man, it was just like a whole different thing going on. It was full of twists and surprises. But I feel like kind of the characters kind of felt like just a touch handicapped here in the Great Hunt, in the Dragon Reborn. But I enjoyed the fact that although Rand is the main primary character as the Dragon Reborn, I enjoyed the fact that Jordan gives the spotlight to all of his other characters as well. You know, I think that's very important. I enjoyed that part. So that is great, because as always, if you're going to tell these big stories, you're going to need a lot of different viewpoints and perspectives to carry it along. So it was great that Rand got maybe about 6 scenes total in this book, this 700 and something page book. So, and they were short and brief. So that was great. The other thing I loved about The Dragon Reborn is that it moved the story forward. As I said before, you know, some people say that this is the end of the first beginning arc of the series. I saw that taking place, and it made me very excited for what's to come up next. You know, where can we possibly lead to now that Rand is officially the Dragon Reborn? But as always, another thing that I really enjoy about these books in general, is the characters. I do enjoy spending time with these characters, from Nynaeve to Egwene, who is very much, I would even say, became a primary narrative force within that whole group, within that whole trio of her, Nynaeve, and Elaine. So, you know, you would think it'd be Nynaeve, but it's actually Egwene there. So with that being said, what are some of my possible concerns about the follow-up book, the next book, The Shadow Rising, something like that, The Shadow Rising, which I really cannot wait to read, to be honest with you. Looking at the characters, I do not want, and this may be very odd, I do not want to have Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine rely on one another too much. I really would like it if the next books, or they can get one more outing as a trio. After that, they have to be disbanded. I really want to see these 3 ladies work in dynamics with other characters, especially male characters. Like, I would love it at one point that Egwene can finally travel with Rand, even though they're not interested in one another anymore. But I would love to see that. I would love to see Nynaeve travel with Moiraine and Lan, which we know why. But, you know, I'm not really feeling this whole parent being connected, or she's connecting herself to the hip of him, and they're connected to the hip of this character, this new character, was a huntress for the Horn of Valyr named Feli. I think her name was Feli. She had Feli, Falcon, and then some other name she had that she was dubbing herself. But yeah, I want you guys to let me know what's gonna come about with that. I just, you know, that right there is just like, I don't know, I just really found her obnoxious, to be honest with you. Another thing that I'm really hoping for in the preceding books is the Forsaken characters. The bad guys, the Forsaken characters. To me, and this is me expressing myself, they are not, first of all, they're not on stage their presence, their stage presence is just not strong enough for me. All right, it's too short. Anyway, I'm running out of time here, so I'm gonna go and thank you, leave me comments, etc., that sort of thing. I can't wait. I'm gonna read the rest of the books. They're exciting, they're fun, I love them, I enjoy them, and I'm really looking forward to, as many of you guys have expressed at this point, I'm really looking forward to the world opening up, because I think that this is the pivotal time for Jordan's work to really open up. Yeah, we need to see more of these very unique and creative and weird even landmarks and places within this world. So I could do without. I think I'm filled when it comes to the ends. I'm done with the ends. We're through with the ends. I'd rather we get into have a caravan situation at this point. I don't need any more ends. The ships, done with the ships, done with the disposable ship captains and ships. Take care. As always, drop me your comments, and it is what it is.